Hello, Jamf Nation. There are still some free spots in the front, so feel free to join them. And in a moment, you will hear a story about heart of modern MDM. From testing to production, how to adopt blueprints in Jamf Pro from admin's perspective. And the topic will be presented by both blueprints creators and customer. From the production corner, product manager, Michael Manahan. And from the production corner, product owner, Jakub Talasz. And directly from his basement, our customer, Chris Hafner, with large experience since Kasper's few times. So, guys, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wow, packed crew right in the morning. Appreciate it so much. Thank you for being here. So Arik introduced us very nicely. This is what we're going to be talking about today. A little bit of a journey from really the testing stages to a full production deployment with a real customer. He actually agreed to come out here and be with us. So these are our names. And this is the agenda for today, right? So we're going to start just with the quick intro and a little bit of an overview. Then we're going to be talking about Brewster Academy's journey through blueprints. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the general outcomes, what you can expect implementing blueprints into your own organization. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the actual landscape of blueprints right now, where it's going, maybe something you can expect. And we're hoping to reserve a little bit of time at the end for some nice Q&A. With that said, though, let's start with a little icebreaker of code names. So many of you probably don't know this, but Blueprints was almost called recipes, like up until the last couple of months of its development cycle. And the components were called ingredients. So like we had a ton of food-based puns. And you know who else likes code names is Apple. So we have a couple of names here for different products. Some of these are real, some of these are fake, and I want you guys to guess which is which. So we'll start with purple as the original iPhone. Is that a real code name or a fake code name? Go ahead and shout it out. I heard a real. Anybody else? Somebody said fake. So that one is real, actually. Purple, nice job, real Applehead there. So purple, they didn't want people to know that they were working on a phone. What about pancake? Pancake for the ultra-thin MacBook, real or fake? Fake, fake. I heard a lot more fakes. You guys got me out real quick on that one. Yes, that was me and ChatGPT came up with that one. So what about Asteroid for the iPad? Real or fake? Ooh. Oh, is this one a little bit more mixed, huh? That one is real. Asteroid was the development team on iPad. All right, and this last one, Whisper, noise-canceling AirPods. Real or fake? I hear a lot more fakes than real. Yeah, that one's, I also came up with that one. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Jakub to talk a little bit about blueprints and sort of the overview of the current ecosystem on it.
Thank you very much, Michael. And let me begin with this slide, which I have borrowed from our Jamf Nation Live conferences in Europe this summer. It depicts some of the core fundamentals of blueprints that we can skim through before diving into more advanced topics today. Because blueprints may look like very simple device management workflows on the first glance, but they're actually quite sophisticated technology that we will be exploring together. So, what's good to know about blueprints in the first place? Well, especially they are very dynamic and built to be future-proof, not just for current configuration needs, but as a foundation for countless future possibilities, because with blueprints, you can configure virtually anything. So as Apple and Jamf will continue to evolve, blueprints will be the key tool for adopting those changes while maintaining the ease of use. Yeah, so gone are the days of disjointed configurations between computers and mobile devices. Gone are the nasty side effects when deploying configuration profiles. Yeah, we want clarity of outputs as well as clean new UI to support the unified approach to device configuration management. Blueprints are also built on new Jamf platform, which is modern, based on a new technological stack, and enables us things like continuous delivery of features or being able to more rapidly react on industry changes. And even though there is still a significant roadmap in front of us, we believe we have all the key DDM things, declarations in place to keep your devices managed and secured so that you can maintain your security standards and adhere to your organization's policies, which I believe is exactly what they achieved at Brewster Academy, isn't it, Chris?
All right. My name is Chris Hafner. I'm an IT manager and systems engineer for Brewster Academy's flagship campus in Wolfboro, New Hampshire. That actually is my office building, but don't worry, like all good IT folks, they put me in the basement next to the bathrooms, all right? So at least it's convenient, we got our own coffee maker. But we're gonna kind of bring you through the story in which we implemented blueprints at first, some of our international campuses before bringing them back in, and kind of bring you through beta testing and how we put everything into place to bring our campuses forward together. But I need to set you up a little bit of backstory first. So you'll see up on the screen here, in and amongst these bullet points, that we have 3 campuses, all right? Our flagship campus, we launched in 1820. It's been a while. We've gone through a couple of different iterations of things. And in 1993, we began the world's first one-to-one laptop deployment program with Apple laptops. Since then, we've grown and expanded and changed things, and I don't want to pretend like we know everything or anything like that. We've just made a lot of mistakes for a long time and learned from them. And in 2012, we implemented BYOD for our student machines. Therefore, brought in the Casper suite to help us manage that at the point. Fast forward through a few more years, we get up to 2019, and we take a look at joining the RC program, in part so we see things ahead of time and get up to the cloud, because that was a free cloud integration, if anybody remembers that offer from the beginning of it, and set ourselves well up to move into the future. So at our primary campus, our flagship campus in Brewster Academy, we have slightly less people, less students than have registered for this particular speak. So about 350 there. We're a boarding environment. It's 9 through postgraduate. We've got a lot of different programs and successful graduates and so on and so forth. But when you're looking to change the face of education globally or at large, it's hard to do that, 350 students at a time. So before and during the pandemic, we kind of hatched this plan to launch a couple of international campuses and start on a broader expansion for our institution, because we felt we had a real good grasp on what we were doing and wanted to really bring that to the globe as a whole. So in 2023, we launched our first international campus in the Chambéry neighborhood of Madrid, Spain. This campus is dramatically different than the campus that we have in New Hampshire. It's a day school. The overall population, when we fully populate, should be about 1,100 students. It's pre-K through senior with an IB tie-in. And we have a lot of other things to deal with, like iPads that we don't usually use a lot of at Brewster in Wolfboro, and a lot of other restrictions and a lot of other, configuration differences that were just going to exist naturally operating in Europe with a different population. So when we were setting up these campuses, and in part because we were an RC installation in New Hampshire, we felt that it was really important to have a totally separate technology stack for this set of institutions. And seeing that we were going to be expanding beyond this, hopefully, right? We wanted to make sure that everything that we were setting up was kind of bringing us into the future. We're going to take this opportunity to modernize what we were doing with how we were managing our devices, in the goals that once we get a few of these campuses set up, we'd be able to transition students across campus seamlessly, transition faculty from campus to campus seamlessly, but we had to get started first. So as we set this campus up, we set them up with their independent stacks, Jamf, Apple, but we let them do their own parts for networking and printing and so on and so forth. Anyways, this was a great way to get started, and in 2023, that first campus launched. Things were going great. Started going through a few years, and we got less and less touches with our international IT teams. There had been a few changes. They had kind of gone back and forth. They ended up with 3 techs, including their director, after a bit of time. And this past summer, while we were getting ready to have our discussions to launch our second campus in the La Moraleja area of Madrid, Spain, which is a beautiful campus, by the way. If anybody has a chance to hit our website, go check that out. It's really great stuff. We came up with a couple of issues. First, I got a call this past August to let me know that we had let go the top 2 IT techs for those campuses, and we maintained our level 1 tech. And this was about 4 weeks ahead of the launch of the La Moraleja campus. Not a great way to start the rollout on a new campus, right? So we got a little bit interested in what was going on because we started to get reports from this tier 1 tech that they weren't able to lock out computers, they weren't able to do a few things. So we started to get more directly involved again. We jumped back in to find that this Jamf instance had been unlicensed for almost a month. And fortunately, all of the certificates are still good, so we were able to relicense that, get that spun back up, but then started looking through the configurations. While in New Hampshire, we only use Jamf Pro and Jamf Protect. Happy to talk about why we do those in specific. In Madrid, we use almost the full suite, right? So it's Jamf Pro, Jamf Connect, Jamf Safe Internet, and Protect. We started to take a look at all those components we're missing. There were all these disparate configuration profiles. There were policies all over the place. It was obvious that there had been a lot of changing text in and out through this series of Jamf instances, and we realized that we were going to have to do almost an entire rebuild, all right? Now, when we take a look at this, a few things that we put up on the slide for you was the understanding that the configurations and different requirements that we had in these campuses made it a complex environment. We had hoped that, by allowing them immediate and full control, that we would be able to, keep that a little bit simpler for them, but we kind of mixed that up a little bit. It was a small IT team. My team in New Hampshire started as 6 people. Sorry, I covered up that mic. Started as 6 people because we did a lot of development work, but in Madrid, it was 3 folks for now 2 campuses. But because we had let 2 of those go and rehired a brand new technology director right at the beginning of that, we were down to 2 for 2 campuses and about to deploy 400 to 500 machines. I still have to get a completely accurate count on the rest of the iPads that they put in at the lower school. But we saw that this was not going to scale well. This was going to be an issue, but it was an opportunity for us to do a rebuild and get them configured in the right way. So, now that you've kind of seen the frame up of some of the problem that we had, I want to talk a little bit about the beta program. We began testing blueprints in beta at Jamf's Invite, I believe in January. Obviously, everything got announced last JNUC, but everything was kind of still in development and still coming in. So we were lucky enough to be able to have that opportunity through that program, not necessarily through anything else, but really just through our interactions with beta and some touches with the RC program ahead of time to be able to start testing this. Now, the first thing that we came up with was the fact that we needed to implement a couple of things, right? Jamf SSO. A lot of people you'll hear talking about that. There's a whole support booth out there for those of you that have questions about Jamf SSO. We imagine there might be a few questions about that after this. We'll direct you that way. But trust me, once you get there, it's fantastic. But we knew that this was an opportunity, right? Every challenge is an opportunity, right? So this was an opportunity to kind of fix some of the stuff that had kind of gone out of whack and put them on a better path forward. We had a need for simplified device management across the whole range of expansions. Like I said, we have these 2 campuses, but we want to do more once we have these ones up and going well. And Jamf's support. Jamf support in the area, because we were going to be having these small IT teams, we wanted to make sure that they had good, solid support, and they have been fantastic at that. Even after this, I got a little joke later on about support that I hope everybody appreciates. But that was great opportunity to be able to bring this forward at that timing as everything came in. So, whenever you're implementing anything new, there's a couple of phases that you really have to stick with. I'm not giving you anything new at this point. You need to test and learn, right? We had the opportunity through the beta program early on to be testing on our own campus in New Hampshire. And we were able to take that experience and bring that forward and start to set up as we were getting Protect and Connect and everything else put in. We decided that there were going to be 2 blueprints that we could implement essentially right away. And kind of the nice part is we ended up talking about those during the keynote. It was software updates and some basic security and restrictions profiles. All right. So while we had tested with ourselves, we had to convince this brand new set of technicians. We had our ongoing Tier 1 tech and the new director that we had, that this was the path forward. And so we started to gather a few computers, but we had a really short period of time. Like I said, I got this news in August. We had hired, the very beginning of August 2nd or 3rd, I think. And then we had hired the new director only about 2 weeks later, which is absolutely fantastic. But if anybody's done any business in Spain, you know that for the most of August, everybody's on vacation, right? Our techs were on vacation. Everybody was on vacation. So it was interesting, sitting and waiting for this stuff to come up. In the meantime, Jamf had put out an email saying, hey, does anybody want to talk about implementing blueprints at JNUC? And I said, oh, heck. Well, we've got to rebuild this crazy instance in Spain anyways. Why not talk about my experience by the time I get there? So we'd actually agreed to this before I'd actually done any of that work, which was interesting. And thankfully, it did work out as well as I had thought. But with anything, there are always going to be hiccups. And so that's why you really, really, really have to test as fast as you can. We jumped on this very quickly with a group testing software update policies through blueprints. Set up 2 groups for that, right? You're always going to have your test group and an implementation group on almost anything. Blueprints are no exception to that. And it's really good that we started to do that, because the very first test had a conflict. And when you're looking at blueprints versus something that you might have done with configuration profiles, it's kind of a different way at looking at those results. You don't get logs like you might have with policies, but you wouldn't get those with profiles either. So it took me a minute to wrap my head around where I would check for those logs. And there's great documentation on the API and within the declaration and the MDM profile itself on the end device. But we can talk about that later if anybody has deep questions. But either way, it was nice to be able to roll those, because within a week, we had to deploy the first 150 computers for their incoming faculty at the Chambéry campus. A week later, the launch of the La Moraleja campus happened on September 15th, Monday, September 15th. Does anybody remember what happened Monday, September 15th? Right? It was the release of macOS Tahoe. So imagine that. You've got this new campus starting up. You've got some fresh techs. You've got a freshly rebuilt instance. But they got to go in knowing that there weren't going to be any surprises on Tahoe showing up. We had tested later the rest of that week, and we got the basic student restrictions and basic security in, which was nice, because while we don't operate with a lot of iPads for our students, all of the younger and lower classes that they have, they're up until about 6th grade, runs through those. And with blueprints, once you set a policy for something that works across a set of devices, in this case, say a passcode policy, that works for your iPads, that works for your iPhones, that works for everything across the board. So it really started to be able to simplify a lot of the varied configurations they were using, and they weren't using that many, a dozen or 2, really. So as we went and got through this, these are really small. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. But this is kind of what we ended up looking like here, right? So before we started to implement the blueprints, we had a variety of different configuration profiles all over the place, some for mobile, some for macOS. We had some inconsistently applied security settings, very inconsistently applied patching, particularly for OS updates, things like that. Everything was kind of starting to go custom, for each campus as they had set those up. So we were able to delete a lot of configuration profiles and rein that in, and therefore track a lot less and have to pay attention to a lot less, since they only had those 2 techs now. For more students than we handle right now, with a pretty robust team in New Hampshire, they were able to do that, roll that out, and within the second day, start kind of telling us they were relaxing a little bit and focusing on more of the regular bits of operating a school, like dealing with printer issues and things of that nature, right? So anyways, we actually got them set up on this great new roadmap so that we can start planning a lot of more advanced configurations. This was pretty simple stuff, right? Now, it's weird to be able to sit on here on stage and tell you that setting software update policies for your Macs, having been an Apple administrator for well over 20 years, to tell you that that's simple is really fantastic. And while that's not dedicated just to blueprints, having those policies and configurations, whether they be new declaratives or some legacy payloads from configuration profiles, being able to have that all within your blueprints is really, really, really fantastic. So we've started us both on this early part of what I see as a long roadmap, all right, to be able to layer in all of the rest of our configurations as we get more advanced moving throughout. You're going to see that in a lot of the other discussions that you've had here. There are a lot of really interesting things that we're already starting to see from remedial blueprint policies and blueprints and things like that I've heard from in some other talks. So this is going to get really exciting, particularly as we get into the next couple of years, all right? Now, that's an easy way for me to say, hey, we got these other campuses rebuilt real quick, we got them started on blueprints, and now we can slowly start to back out. And this is something I didn't mention earlier, and I apologize. We didn't back out all of those other configuration profiles that were in there. There were 2 that were causing conflicts that we found that we did pull out, but because you can layer in blueprints with testing, not everything's absolutely perfect all the time, you can start to slowly pull out those old configuration profiles that you have as you become more comfortable with more complex configurations in your blueprints. Blueprints are also stackable, right? So one of the things that we'll talk about in a few minutes kind of come down to kind of planning your broader blueprints and then adding more complex blueprints to the top of that. So some common pitfalls, all right? Again, this is the one I've heard from everybody. Jamf account, Jamf SSO, really jump on that. Now, we're a Google institution. With Apple, we didn't have a lot of really crazy things there. There was nothing that got in our way. So that while we set up Jamf SSO during our initial beta testing back in January, we're not really sure when Madrid set up theirs. But when we came back into the integration, Jamf SSO was already set up. So to me, what that means is that we had a variety of folks that really struggled with the general Jamf technologies, but were able to turn on SSO like that. So I'm sure there is a good way forward for almost everybody. I don't want to pretend like I know all the idiosyncrasies of everybody's installations, but seriously, it makes interacting with not only new technologies, but spinning up beta instances. It works exactly like they showed in the keynote yesterday. It is really, really, really slick and awesome. Possibly too slick and awesome. I did run myself into one problem. So while we have Jamf account at my institution, brewsteracademy.org, we have an entirely separate one for BA International to help deal with data localization and different things like that as we have everything overseas. But as I was helping them integrate some of these other products, pretty rapid fire development back and forth between our teams, they had invited me to their Jamf account, I think, to help with Jamf Protect, and I got this really great email that the first 2 paragraphs were these big red lettered words saying, "Do not accept this. If you belong to another Jamf account, you'll disconnect yourself and do all of this." I scrolled right through it and clicked OK. So it wasn't as dramatically bad as I would have immediately assumed, because you should always have some backup methods to log into your Jamf Pro and products. But we also had some other administrators. Believe it or not, I even have my help desk tech who has gone through the Jamf 100 and 170. I suggest everybody do that. They're free, even if you don't test out. Really great. They had access, my system administrator. So working with Jamf support real quick, feeling embarrassed, went with my tail between my legs and said, "Please, can I get back into my own instance?" And they were kind enough to help me back. And it was really a simple process, didn't lose anything, no control, no weird configuration settings to really change there. So that was great, but then I got into my other account for the folks over in Madrid and BA International, which is, again, another beautiful thing for being able to swap between these instances. So that was one thing. Balancing speed and thorough testing, all right? It was nice that I got to test on my own ahead of time, because really we put the first bits of this into implementation within a week, which is probably too fast, but for us it's what it had to be, right? That what the environment dictated, right? So we were able to really get that in quick, but we made sure to also build a test category for each of those blueprints. So that as we got into the general swing of things, which is now, they're only just settling in right now, then we can start to go back in and see where we're going to add on some more. Managing expectations during transition. The good news is we didn't need to change anything for the end user's expectations in Madrid at all, but we do on my campus. So on my campus, which I haven't talked about much here, we've been doing a lot of software updates via Superman update, by the way. Really love that stuff. But as much as I'm a fan of that thing, I always want first-party tools, right? Who doesn't want first-party tools? So for us, we need to manage that expectation, because we actually informed our entire institution and educated them that we were no longer, a few years ago, no longer going to be showing them standard update notifications, right? That's one of the nice things when you swap to Superman, is you start to put in your own notifications. But after a while, that's kind of gotten a little bit annoying to folks. So we have to manage our expectations with our users in our primary campus as we swap back to standard Apple software update notifications, so that they know that those things are coming. So it was really easy in Madrid, and we're finishing up that transition in Brewster. But I will tell you this, for those that are transitioning out of other things, software update, DDM, blueprints, Superman work really well together. They both kind of respect what each other's trying to do, and so I have to kind of tell myself I still want to head away from that, even though there's some additional functionality that will probably end up in the software update declaration at some point. Right now, I'll say that my primary use of Superman is making sure that my students can't update their computers before 3 p.m. There are a few of my students that have figured out if they start a software update in the middle of class, that they don't have to do anything. So we could talk about different things that we allow our students to do or not do. But so anyways, we also learned that we had to plan for these different rollouts. So while in my head, even though I had tested blueprints a lot on my own, they're so simple that they reconvinced me that they were just simple. I was just going to throw them in, turn them on, and move on to other things. And while that's true, you really do want to take the opportunity early, and that's why I really encourage everybody. If you're looking at blueprints now, and you're going to see some cool extra things in a minute, and you're going, it doesn't do everything that I want yet, and it probably won't do everything that you want yet, it's a nice early part of that roadmap. Start this now. You don't have to get rid of the other things that you're doing. You don't have to eliminate anything. It's not like a lot of other technology transitions that we've done in the past where we fundamentally had to give up something. You don't with this. So you can get on this early and slowly roll in everything as these new declarations and these new payloads come out. And then eventually You'll just be there. You're not going to have a period in another year or two where you suddenly go, oh no, I have to rebuild everything with blueprints right now. All right? So pro tip, start small, right? Scale gradually or quickly, right? Whatever you do, but gradually is best, right? Test extensively. It's going to take a little bit for you to get used to where the logs are on these things because now they're on the machine or you have to grab them from the API. There's great documentation to this. I admit when I started in this, I was a little trepidatious about that, even though it was better reporting than I got with configuration profiles. I'm still not sure why I was so trepidatious, but everything that I was wondering over the past several months, I started to see why that was there, particularly during the keynote. All right, and you can plan those overlap periods. You can only plan the overlap periods if you start before this eventually runs out. Now, I don't know anybody talking about the end of the other technologies that we're using, so you probably got a while, but we should start as early as you can. All right. Now, last couple of recommendations. This is going to kind of wrap everything all back up. You're going to want to enable admin SSO, right? That's going to be the big thing. Again, they've got the great support group out here with the SSO desk and different things like that to get you there. Start with a pilot group and keep those pilot groups, all right? 10 or 15% would be great. Sometimes, depending on the scope of what you're deploying, it might be a lot smaller than that. But you want some variety, particularly if you have variety in how you had other configuration profiles and things like that in the past, because you're going to want to learn how to layer these. There are going to be some that you can make that are standard. So for us, security policies, for the most part, are standard. Update policies are standard, right? I have a test group, but I've got a test group for that before we move into that. But then you may end up with a lot of really specific and even more complex blueprints that you can layer on top of those, which is one of my favorite parts about blueprints, is you can layer that. So I can see all sorts of fun things in the future because we need to prep these other campuses that operate fundamentally differently from how we do so that we can transition our students from us to them and back, and our faculty to them and back, and create a better global share between these campuses. So choose simple configurations initially, right? Something that you can get a hold of. I still love sitting up here and telling you that software update, management is simple now. Plan that structure, test thoroughly, and scale gradually, all right? To give you a little bit more info on the roadmap, we're going to pass back to Jakob.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we can call this next section commercial break because I would like to advertise a few incoming features that I certainly hope you could benefit from as well. Well, let me begin with current Blueprints landscape. At the present time, we support about 46 components that consist of declarations, which are native, as well as configuration profile payloads that are delivered onto the devices through the DDM protocol. Hopefully you have time to take a photo, because there is another slide. Well, because we have so much of these that it doesn't even fit on one slide, and frankly, this slide doesn't contain 5 configuration payloads that we have released just last Thursday. Altogether, this toolset contains hundreds of restrictions or configuration items for a variety of device kinds, from the largest Apple TVs to the teeniest, tiniest Apple Watches. But before you go stand up and restrict something for your users, let's have a look at some news. So one of the best ways how to go further with Blueprints is through its public API. It's a feature that is super suitable for advanced IT admins, technology providers, DevOps teams, Daniel McLaughlin, you name it. Yeah, it feels a bit odd to call it public API while it's not public yet, but once it is, and public beta is expected in Q4, then it's super easy to begin playing with it. You just navigate to your Jamf account. There's gonna be a new section in the left-hand navigation called API Clients. You create a new one for Blueprints, specify targeting, permissions, and generate yourself an access token. Then you're ready to go. There's already documentation of this API available on developer.jamf.com if you want to check out its capabilities. Yeah, but it's a full-fledged API with which you are able to create, list, read, scope, deploy, delete blueprints. In order to incorporate this better into your infrastructure as code, methods at your businesses, you have seen that the Jamf consulting team is developing and maintaining Terraform provider on top of this very API. If you are more interested in whole Jamf API ecosystem, there's a special booth at the expo hall, so I certainly recommend to paying those guys a visit. Another great way to make the most of blueprints is through upcoming custom declarations component. This new feature is gonna enable you to create assets or configurations that are not yet available in our existing components library. Because one picture is worth 1,000 words, you can have a look at this screenshot, where admin is configuring user identity asset as well as email account configuration. Yeah, we don't have those yet available. You can also witness some baby steps of variable substitution within these components and ability to link the declarations together. This feature is just undergoing a private beta and should be available to all of you shortly. In the very beginning of this session, I mentioned that blueprints are built to be dynamic. And as we are now evolving, you will be increasingly seeing components that do not just take Apple specification and one-to-one deploy on the devices. But you will be seeing components that are capable of handling more elaborate and sophisticated workflows end-to-end. The first example probably is the set it and forget it feature in the software updates component that was presented at the keynote yesterday. As a treat for you for attending our session, I can also reveal one thing which Katie didn't mention yesterday. We also count with ability to ignore major operating system updates here. So you will not be worried that your Sequoia devices will be updated to Tahoe before you are fully ready to embrace it. Public beta of this particular one is expected in upcoming weeks. So it took eternity for whole mankind to learn how to fly, but then it only took 66 years to land on the moon. Similarly, I believe we are accelerating the pace of developing and delivering new features to blueprints. I certainly hope you will be enjoying this flight with us if I can be a bit melodramatic here. Okay, Michael?
Perfect, okay. So we're gonna open up to Q&A here in a second, but really want to drive home these last 3 takeaways. So my point is going to be around starting small and scaling smart. Identify a problem in your organization that you think you can solve with blueprints, and then figure out a way to start there and test and roll out before you just go wild with it. So make sure that you're starting small and scaling smart. Jakob?
Blueprints are very quickly evolving. There are new features all the time. So I highly recommend, before diving into larger deployments, check out the latest news, and maybe you will find something that will simplify your life and save some time.
And I can say from putting this into production in real-world experience, this is helping simplify the experience for end users and making it much, much, much simpler and safer for our admins to expand these deployments.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. We have about 5 minutes for Q&A. Arik is going to run around with the mic.
Nice job, guys.
Okay, it's now time for questions, so please raise your hand. Okay. a lot of questions.
What's the best way to avoid conflicts with your original configuration profiles? Is it something like creating a smart group where you can just exclude them from certain groups, then and scope the blueprint to that? Just when you're getting started, what's the best way to avoid those conflicts?
In my experience, the best way to avoid those conflicts is to find them fast, right? So I know that sounds weird or overly simple, right? But get a small test group going, even if it's just a couple of computers on your bench, right? Because you need to start putting those out. It's hard to tell about the scale and complexity of the configuration profiles and things you already have in place. In our case, it was a configuration profile that was attempting, a custom profile attempting to block all major software updates and things like that, and it actually got in the way of the software update blueprint. But we were able to see that and realize that the way that we had that previous configuration profile was a problem. Pulled it out, all the other ones scaled through. But it depends. I mean, they only had maybe 20 configuration profiles. I've talked to several folks that have 80, 90, 100 plus across the organization. So, yep.
So our organization has multiple Jamf tenants. We have like 6 or 7 now. How do you manage like blueprints in a multi-tenant organization?
So here's the fun part. I am almost completely deaf. I got these. He's going to repeat that question for me. Otherwise, my head's going to play a game of telephone. It won't be good.
Yeah, I believe the question was, how do you manage blueprints in multi-tenant organization, correct? Yeah.
That didn't help me either, sorry.
No.
Blueprints in what?
In multi-tenant organizations, right? So you have multiple Jamf Pro instances, and you're trying to figure out how to manage your blueprints across them, right?
Okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah. I can tell you what we planned, but...
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So one of the things that you started to see yesterday were some of the introductions of the broader API. When we were starting to test blueprints, what we kind of wondered was, okay, how exactly do we expand these? Because we do have separate Jamf Pro instances. And I've got a couple of tech blogs and things like that dealing with other components of just that. But in our case, we went, well, we can't clone these, right? You go into blueprints and there's no clone, there's no duplicate, there's no whatever. But it turns out with the API, you can do it like that. And with the API, you can actually download it, upload it programmatically. So there are a lot of things that you'll see as you explore into this that were announced very briefly yesterday. I was sitting in the back going, oh, this answers almost all of my questions. So, yeah.
On the other side.
We've got this lovely countdown timer.
Any best practices switching from configuration profiles to blueprints when you, is it just to ensure that the systems stay compliant with your, in particular your security settings, that the config profiles didn't get pulled off and hours later the blueprint finally applies, or how that transition works?
So I just want to make sure I hear that right. How do we benchmark and make sure that we're not missing something in a blueprint that we pulled out in the configuration? Was that it? Yeah, okay. So we've been lucky enough, this is another Jamf account thing, we've been lucky enough to have compliance going. So what we're doing is we're actually monitoring this through success, and doing that testing in a larger scale and scope, we can actually see that the declarations have been accepted. You do get that readout on your blueprints, right? You get deployed, failed, and not deployed, right? Failed means there was a conflict. That's what it means, right? It didn't mean it usually, well, okay, I guess you might be able to tell me other states, but it was pretty simple. And then watching your fleet, right? It's actually better reporting than we ever got really out of configuration profiles, because there were a lot of different things that can stop the configuration profiles from deploying or being updated, one thing wrong in a profile chain, whereas the declarations all match up on that one profile. The MDM profile, which is really nice. So in my environment, again, very simply to start, we haven't run into too many issues reporting back on that. It's basic security posturing and software updates. That's all items built into compliance reporting right now. So.
All right, and I'm super sorry. We have only a minute left, so not really enough time for another question. But thank you for being here. Please give a massive round of applause to Chris.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you have further questions, you can go up to the Jamf booth. There will be lots of people there that can help answer them, including ourselves. So thank you so much.
I'll be standing there for about 4 hours to go, so looking
perfect,
forward
yeah.
to see you there.
Fantastic. All right.